Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Soph Reads, my YouTube channel. This is my 2025 year in review reading wrap up, and I'm excited to be doing this video right now and getting it out to you guys. First off, I just want to say a big thank you to my followers and my subscribers. Thank you so much for the views and for the love. I have been on Book YouTube and Bookstagram and Book Talk, all of the book sites for exactly 6 months now, and it has been such a fun journey, and I'm so excited to go into 2026 with this community. So basically, with this reading wrap up, I'm just going to go through all of the books that I've read this year, give you a short one sentence description of them, and hopefully it will entice you to read the book as well, and then let you know my rating of it, whether or not I would recommend it, sort of what I liked or what I didn't like about it. And then I will also let you guys know all of the books that I DNF'd this year because there were quite a few. Okay, and yes, I do have my computer to look at my Goodreads with because it is hard to remember all of the statistics. But so far this year, I have read 17 books. By time I upload this video and we actually go into the new year, it will probably be more so around 20. I have two books that I'm reading right now and I'm almost done with them, so I know that I'll finish them this year. And then I have one more book that I'm going to be reading for my Christmas vlog that I have already posted, and that will count again. So my stat number for the year, give or take, 20, but I did read quite a few more. I DNF'd one, two, three, four. I think I DNF'd 4 or 5 books this year. I can only recall 4 of them right now. So obviously they were super memorable. Oh, it's 5 books. 5? Okay, I think I DNF'd 5 books this year, I'm gonna say. So I've read more than 17, but I don't like to count books that I didn't fully finish, like all the way from the cover to the last page. So we'll say 17 right now is the number of books I've read so far this year, but it will probably end up finishing off like 20. My reading goal for this year was only 12 books, so I definitely surpassed that. And I ended up bumping it up to 15 halfway through the year when I realized I was going to meet that. I will go in chronological order now of the 17 books that I have finished so far this year. So, first off, this year, I started off strong by rereading the Hunger Games series in anticipation for the new and fourth book, Sunrise on the Reaping. So, I read Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay, and they still hold such a strong place in my opinion of like what are the greatest works of literature. I think Suzanne Collins is an absolute trailblazer, and I love this series so much. I loved them when I first read them in 6th grade, and I still love them today. So they all got 5 stars for me, and so did the new book, Sunrise on the Reaping. Although it was sad, it was 100% one of my favorite reads of the year. Definitely got a 5 star for me. One sentence to describe the Hunger Games series is remember who the real enemy is. That's one of my favorite quotes and just one of the best ways that I can describe the series as a whole and kind of how it translates to the real world. I have still yet to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I have seen the movie. I loved it. I own the book, so I definitely am going to read it. I just have a hard time getting back into a series once I've sort of completed it. And after reading Sunrise on the Reaping, I was like, I think I need a little bit of a break from sad books. And I will genuinely not survive that movie, but I'm so excited for it. And then, would I recommend the Hunger Games books? 1000%. They're probably my favorite book series of all time, and I would read anything that Suzanne Collins writes. Then I read a really nice and short book called 31 Day Devotional for the Brokenhearted. This was a really beautiful book for anybody going through times of grief or in need of times of healing, and especially for anybody that likes to have a short devotional in their life if you're spiritual, but even if you're not. I did give this book 5 stars, and I would recommend it for anybody going through a difficult time in their life or just looking for a little bit of inspiration in their spiritual practices. And then one sentence that I would use to describe the book would be never rush healing yourself. And when you're ready to get back out there again, go for it. And I totally forgot to say, but that book is by Alicia Cummings. Next, I read Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This book was very highly anticipated for me, and it did not disappoint. Like, this was fantastic. I gave this book 5 stars, and I definitely recommend it for anybody that likes romance, horror, and very gory storytelling. One sentence that I would use to describe this book is there's someone for everyone. Next, I read Twilight, the first book in the Twilight Saga series by Stephanie Meyer. This was one of the worst books I read this year, and probably one of the worst books I've ever read in my life. I gave this book a 2-star rating. So, no, I would not recommend this book unless you are just absolutely the world's biggest teenage romance story lover. And I guess if you're a super big Twilight fan, you could look past the cringiness of this book and enjoy it. Just for me, I could not look past certain things. In my Goodreads review, I said it was a 1-star for me the entire time because of how uncomfortable the writing and dialogue made me. However, I really enjoyed the last 90 pages when the actual plot picks up and the main drama unfolds. The stakes are a lot higher and the writing got a little bit better, but I did feel like the most important parts were rushed and glossed over, and then parts that didn't matter at all, like Bella literally explaining every single painting hanging on their hotel bedroom wall, was drawn out for paragraphs. I just felt like this book did not have good writing. Maybe I would have liked it if it was written better, but I do not recommend this book. If I were to describe this book in one sentence, it would be teenagers are extremely dramatic. And that's all I'll say. Next, I read Passion Project by London Sperry. I gave this book a 4 out of 5-star rating. I really liked it. It's not one of my favorite books I've ever read, but I do feel like it touched on grief really well, and it was a very beautiful love story. I would recommend this book for people that are romance readers and anybody that has ever lost someone and possibly looking for a new perspective on dealing with grief and moving forward. If I were to describe this book in one sentence, it would be don't let the things that happen to you hold you back because they are what makes you you. Next, I read The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I highly recommend it for anybody that likes mystery, that likes thrillers, and that likes complex family dynamics. And I would say one sentence to describe this book is keep your friends close and your enemies closer, because this book is like don't trust anybody. Next, I read We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, and I did not like this book at all. It triggered my claustrophobia, and it just was not great. I just expected so much more from the plot. I think I gave it 3 stars, but when I think about it, it's like more of a 2-star for me. It just fell really flat. I would not recommend this book unless you're super into heavy metal music and the history of heavy metal music. One sentence I would use to describe this book is rock and roll never dies, or something cliche like that. Next, I read Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin, and I really liked this book. This would be one of those niche genres of horror that absolutely excites me. This book was so complex and beautiful. I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars only because there was certain aspects to the ending that I just wanted a little bit more of. I would recommend this book, but only for people that like very weird literature. It's definitely not something for everyone, but if you're kind of like one of the weird girls and you like weird girl books and like fantasy horror elements, then yes, I would recommend this for you. One sentence that I would use to describe this book would be not every seed should be watered. I'll just leave that there. Next, I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This was also one of my favorite books that I read this year. I think about the main character, Misery, all the time. She was so funny, and I really miss being in her headspace and sort of watching this story unfold from her point of view. So I hope that there is more work from her perspective in the future in terms of that franchise of books by Ali Hazelwood. I gave Bride also like a 4.5 stars out of 5 just because the ending did sort of let me down. I just feel like it was a little bit rushed. but I did really love that book and I highly recommend it, especially for anybody that likes fantasy romance and that likes a little spice in their books. One sentence that I would use to describe Bride would be, don't judge a book by its cover. Next, I read The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. I will get more into it in a moment, but this was my favorite book that I read this year. It just will always have such a special place in my heart, and I think it was just such a fantastic read. I gave this book a whopping 5 out of 5 stars, obviously, and I definitely recommend it for anybody that likes dysfunctional family tropes and that likes a really strong female main character. A sentence I would use to describe this book would be, secrets never stay buried. Next, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This was yet again another Emily Henry book that did not disappoint for me. She has slowly become probably my favorite author, if not one of my favorite authors. And I also gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much. I had DNF'd it a few years back, and I'm so glad that I kept it and gave it another chance because it's probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. So funny, so heartwarming, very intense subjects of grief and loss, but it was done so well that it didn't even feel that heavy to read it, just in terms of like thinking back on it. It was pretty complex. But like I said, this was a 5 out of 5 for me. I definitely recommend this book, especially for people that like romance novels and that like, once again, complex family dynamics. A sentence that I would use to describe this book would be like, give people a chance. Let people prove you wrong. Because sometimes you have this idea of somebody and then they can really prove you wrong in like a good way. So, yeah, let people prove you wrong. Then I read an ARC book that I was really lucky to get my hands on this year. It's called Do You See Me Now by A. Marini. I gave this a 4 out of 5 just because I felt like certain parts were a little bit longer than they needed to be. And I kind of wanted a little bit more from the plot, but I did think it had a really great meaning and message behind it, and I did enjoy it. I would recommend this book for people that like self help books because even though this is a work of fiction, it really followed a sort of self help book type format. And a sentence that I would use to describe this book would be, the biggest enemy you'll ever face is the person that you see in the mirror. So become friends with them.
Me giving out therapy advice this entire video was not intentional.
Next, I read Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, and I did really like this book, but the more that I reflect back on it, the less that I remember. But I gave this book 4 out of 5. It was kind of like a 4.5 ish. But I definitely had some issues with the plot. I felt like certain things were predictable. I also feel like the main love story was a little bit forced. I don't like when two main characters only romantically like each other based off of physical attraction. I like when there's a little bit more depth there. And so I did feel like the main love story wasn't super believable to me. But I did like it. I would recommend it for people that enjoy fantasy books and for people that like books in a series because this is not a standalone book. There's already two, and I think that there's a third one coming out soon. But for me personally, I don't think that I'll be continuing on in the series.
No shade to this book, but I forgot to do a sentence that describes it, so I think that that would be, love and hate walk a fine line.
And then lastly, I read Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. I actually really loved this book. I know Colleen Hoover gets a lot of hate and she's kind of controversial, but I have liked the few books that I've read by her. I really wanted to read Regretting You because I was super excited to see the movie when it came out, which I still have yet to see it. I think I'm going to just wait to rent it because I've heard mixed reviews about it, so I don't really want to see it at the movie theater. But I liked the book. I gave it like a 4 to 4.5 out of 5 stars just because I do feel like there's aspects of this book that sort of glamorize cheating, and also with the cheating storyline in it, it's wrapped up really neatly at the end, almost like everybody's just okay with everything and there's no like lasting trauma. So it just wasn't super believable for how awful the heart of the storyline is. And there's so much betrayal in this book. So I just feel like it was finished too neatly. I also feel like the main two love stories, one is between two teenagers. So there are just aspects of it that were kind of immature, but I guess that's to be expected when it's from the perspective of like a 16-year-old. And then the other storyline between the two adults, it just felt like wrong. Like almost like two people are justifying being together because they were cheated on, but they're not like recognizing that they're also kind of practicing infidelity in that. So basically when they like look back on the past and they think about their experiences with each other, I'm like, weren't you kind of cheating with each other back then? And so now you're justifying your cheating by being cheated on? I don't know. It was just kind of like a mind screw. Like I was like, what is happening? But I really enjoyed it. Like, I would read this book again. I would recommend it for romance lovers. I would say that if you are not one that can stomach reading about infidelity, it is pretty heavy on that. That's kind of the point of the book. So I wouldn't recommend it for those types of people. But if you like romance books, this book is pretty good. A sentence that I would use to describe it would be, I don't even know how I would describe this book. It's so messed up. Real love never ages. I don't know how else to describe this book. So that is all of the books that I've already completed this year. Right now, I am reading Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I'm almost done with it. I'm also in the middle of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte that I am planning on finishing within the next couple of weeks. It's just kind of long. And then for my Christmas video, I read In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. So that is a video that you guys can go watch if you're interested in seeing that. That's sort of my plan for the rest of the year. And then I do look forward to starting a couple of other books. I'm just going to maybe hold off on making videos on them until the new year because I kind of want those to be a part of my 2026 reading year. This year, though, I did have quite a few DNFs after I thought about it because it was very hard to recall them. I DNF'd The Lost Bookshop because I just felt kind of bored with the storyline. I DNF'd Kill Yours, Kill Mine because I took a little bit of a break from reading it for some school work that I needed to focus on. And when I had the opportunity to go back to it, I just was not interested in finishing it, unfortunately. I DNF'd the book Copycat and then also the book Not Quite Dead Yet because they both freaking scared me and I did not feel like not sleeping anymore. And then I recently DNF'd Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, but I do plan on returning back to that book. I think it was just taking a long time to get to the purpose of it. And it's kind of a long book. And I just was like, I need to move on to something else right now. I also DNF'd The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. If you watched my last reading vlog, you'll kind of see all of my reasons for that in there. But I got about halfway through that book and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. It was just not good. But that is sort of everything in a gist. And now I want to talk about some honorable mentions from this year. So, like I said, Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings is my favorite book that I read this year. It was really hard and it was kind of honestly a toss up for me between Butcher and Blackbird, Sunrise on the Reaping, and this. And then I also, even though Bride didn't get a 5 out of 5 for me, I still think about it all the time. So that was kind of also up there for me too. Just overall, this is such a solid book. If you are interested in a book that is dysfunctional but also really beautiful, I really do recommend this. My main con with this book was the editor did not do a very good job at catching typos because there were so many misspellings and typos in this book that I was like, how did this get published? This is a major author and a pretty big publishing company. So I was very unimpressed by that aspect of it. But that has nothing to do with the heart of the book itself and the plot. And sometimes people don't even notice typos. I think I'm just so type A that I do notice those kinds of things. And sometimes it kind of takes me out of the story. But overall, this book was so good and I will think about it forever. That being said, my least favorite book that I read this year was Twilight, not because I don't love the series, but because the book was just not good. My favorite character that I was introduced to this year would probably be Misery from Bride. She is so funny. She's equal parts tough and sweet. And I just hope that wherever she is, she's happy. My favorite book boyfriend that I met this year is gonna be, oh, it's such a tough one. Obviously, I absolutely love Haymitch from Sunrise on the Reaping, but knowing what he grows into and how the pain never really leaves him and he doesn't necessarily handle it the best way. I don't know that he's my favorite book boyfriend, but I do plan on being in love with him when I see the movie. And then I also loved Butcher in Butcher and Blackbird. He is a serial killer, so he has some flaws that like we can either look past or not. But he was pretty hot, pretty cool, pretty fun, so I liked him. But I think my overall favorite book boyfriend would be Sam Penny from The Conditions of Will. He was just so sweet and understanding and funny and smart and compassionate and just like definitely not a real guy, definitely a man written by a woman. But for the time of me reading the book, it felt very real. And I hope to find my own Sam Penny one day because he was fantastic. The biggest jaw dropping moment for me this year reading a book was probably reading The Conditions of Will. It has a pretty big plot reveal in it that I guess looking back you can kind of see coming, but I did not suspect it. I also had my jaw on the ground the entire time I was reading The Reappearance of Rachel Price because this is a mystery book. So there's just so much that the main character is uncovering throughout it. And you're just like, what? And when the actual plot sort of climaxes at the end, there is so much revealed. And I did not really suspect any of it. And my favorite quote from one of the books that I read this year is from The Reappearance of Rachel Price. I can't explain the context of the quote, but it just wrapped it up so beautifully, and I will think about it forever. It is, they crossed the threshold, walked inside, the doors slid shut behind them, taking them away with a midnight shush. They disappeared, but this time they did it together. If you read this book, please let me know so that we can talk about that together. And then lastly, the book that I think had the best writing that I read this year would be Eat the Ones You Love or Sunrise on the Reaping. Eat the Ones You Love was just so deep and thoughtful, and you just wouldn't expect that type of writing given the plot of that book. So I was so thoroughly impressed and surprised by it. And I want to read more of Sarah Maria Griffin's work because I just really connected to her writing style. But I also think that Suzanne Collins is one of the best writers of this generation. And I think that her ability to continuously add on to a series that has already been loved, has already been produced, and just like make it honestly even better and like it makes you understand the other books and the other characters so much more every time you read a new one. These books are all from different time periods within the series, and it still all interconnects so well. And then a little bit of my stats for the year. So, according to my Goodreads, the longest book that I read this year was Twilight at 498 pages. And the shortest book that I read this year was the 31-day devotional at 159 pages. Overall, in 2025, with just those 17 books that I've already read front to back, I read 7,271 pages. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching my 2025 reading wrap up. I had so much fun reading with you guys this year, and I hope you had fun following along. I'm very excited for the 2026 reading season. I have lots of ideas and lots of books that I'm planning on reading, and I am just getting started. So I hope you stay tuned, and I will see you guys in the new year. Bye.